For me, it's my education has always been very mixed. So I started off playing the flute, playing classical flute, and then I switched to guitar briefly, just doing kind of teaching myself. And then quickly I kind of figured out that that I wasn't going to find the kind of music I wanted to make by just playing blues guitar and even, kind of typical rock guitar. I mean, obviously it's worked out that I'm in a semi-popular rock band, so people know me for that. But I would say my interest in composition and in classical training, I played classical guitar. I have a master's from Yale in classical guitar, and so that was pretty fundamental in my musical development. And even more than that, the way I play my guitar parts and the way I think about music is quite influenced by contemporary music and composition. So I might, it's a World Minimal Festival. I might say something like Steve Reich's Electric Counterpoint. For me, is more emblematic of an influence on my guitar playing than I would say, a Jeff Beck classic rock guitar solo. So, that's sort of my orientation. And so the other thing I should say is I don't think of myself as a different person depending on which room I'm in or which type of musicians I'm working with. I'm the same musician. And to me, it just makes for a much richer experience that I can have in my life to be able to move between these two things.
The rock scene is definitely different from the classical scene. Is that something you encounter in your in practice, in your life as a musician?
I mean, depending on the room that you walk into, you can have so many different, people have such different backgrounds and interests and educations. And for the most part, I find it quite exhilarating and exciting. Some kinds of music that I write really need a quiet hall. Other things work quite well in a loud rock club, I enjoy working with classical musicians and working with notated music because it's like, going to France and speaking French or something. It's like it's a way of communication that can really allow you to get further in detail and just deeper into music. So that's something that I enjoy. Occasionally you walk into the wrong room and you find some place where maybe, but that's more and more. It's pretty rare to find kind of judgment in music. I think actually that the kind of boundaries of style and education are much more porous nowadays than they have ever been.
Yeah, Arnold, I think Lunapark has been trying to combine the two worlds together as well, right?
Do we succeed? Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same thing for us. We are in many different rooms and we enjoy that a lot. And I think one thing always helps the other thing. I think, you grow organically if you do different things, we feel. And we basically just play pieces and music we really love, and we love a variety of things. Anthony Fiumara and myself, we lead the ensemble together. We love a variety of things, so why exclude one thing? And so for us it's just logical, and I think we have a group of musicians. Lunapark is a group of musicians, that's what it is, and it's a group of musicians who all like to chew on a variety of things. Definitely, like our violin player Janneke has played gypsy music and etc. etc. It's natural. It's what we like.
Yeah. Bryce, you're going to do an improvisation tonight, aren't you? How important is improvisation in your composed work? Is there any improvisation included?
There's two pieces of mine being performed tonight. Oh Shut Your Eyes Against the Wind, which is a piece that Lunapark is doing, and then Murder Ballads, which is Eighth Blackbird is doing. And they both have elements in them where the performer is asked to choose notes and even rhythms. That is more kind of within a set parameter. But occasionally I have had pieces I performed for many years with a quartet called Clogs that we finished school together, and we all had an interest in improvisation. I think it, if you look back at the Renaissance or Baroque period, or even through the Romantic composers, they would have been really skilled improvisers. And I think somehow along the way that tradition has been lost in at least in the kind of academy in conservatories where they're teaching, really great classical musicians how to play. But I mean, typically the percussionists and brass players tend to be the double bass players. They all have, because they're the repertoire demands that they know. You can't really get away without being an improviser if you're playing percussion or trombone. It's quite difficult because there's so much great repertoire that asks for it. But something that with clogs and then in particular I have in my in rock music, improvisation is a big part of both what I do on stage and then also in when I'm composing. It's I'm improvising to find ideas, and so it's pretty important to me. And it's New York City has a great kind of downtown experimental music scene. That was some of the first things I was doing when I moved there. Were involved with them, and so I think it's quite important actually for me.
Yeah. Looking back to musical tradition, I think in an earlier interview, maybe it was a year ago in Eindhoven, you said that Bartók was a major influence, was a composer or his music you like to listen to. Is his music audible, so to speak, in what you do?
The piece that is premiered last night and is being done again tonight, Murder Ballads, is all adapted American folk music. So that I definitely see Bartók as my inspiration there. Obviously, I'm doing it in a very American way, and in a different kind of way than he would have. In particular, I find I've obviously worked a fair amount with the American minimalists. I've performed with both Steve Reich and Philip Glass and Terry Riley actually, and they are tremendously interesting and incredible composers. I think for my generation, which is kind of post minimal, if you will, or the third generation after, it's been important to me to look just deeper into music for influence and for inspiration. And Bartók's string music is really my favorite, and so I have a bound copy of the Bartók string quartets that I've developed a relationship with Kronos Quartet and groups like Amsterdam Sinfonietta, and so I've been asked to write quite a lot of string music, and it's as a guitarist it's not the easiest thing. So as far as great works for strings, I would say like the Bartók string divertimento is probably my favorite, or the Bartók string quartet. So that's been a big influence.
Yeah, a bound copy you said of recordings or of the notes?
Of the notes. Yeah, I keep the scores with me. Yeah, because it's it's just so it's like. I mean, for me, it's like going to the church of string music when you just need a moment of just sort of to look at someone who really knew what they were doing. Yeah. Originally this piece came about it's been written for both groups, for 8th Blackbird and for Lunapark. And the recent pieces I've done with Lacrimé was a string orchestra piece for Amsterdam Sinfonietta, and then you mentioned Tenebrae, which was written to honor Steve Reich on his 75th birthday. Both of those have a kind of distinctly elements of what I would call kind of great European Western tradition classical music. And for this piece I just had in my mind I wanted to do something different and distinctly American, and so I was looking into different traditions of American music, and around that time we had the election in America, which always brings up like big big questions of American identity. If you living in New York, you can kind of get lost in the idealism of the great city that's so diverse. But the minute there's an election coming, you realize, wow, we are a really divided country and have been for a long time. We also had the terrible school shootings and cinema shooting in Aurora, Colorado, around in the last 7 or 8 months. So those events, I've started thinking about, violence and American identity, the Civil War, these kind of, what is it about the kind of American frontierism that is just, kind of blood-soaked, basically. And so without being too grim, I was thinking about the murder ballad tradition. I've known murder ballads for years. I mean, they're obviously kind of standard American folk songs that many, many great singers have sung. And thinking about the Bartók tradition of folk music, I wanted to do something for this piece that used those folk tunes as a kind of departure point. So with the idea that I set there's 3 or 4 of them that are that you actually hear the melodies. There's a song called "Oh Me Wise." There's one called "Young Emily," and another called Pretty Polly, which are all really gruesome tales of these murders that most of them are kind of romantically charged murders that would have been sung in different communities. The tales kind of change over time. It's very much part of an oral folk tradition. So the grandmas would sing them at their kitchen hearth, or it would be accompanied by a banjo. And so in these pieces are elements of the melodies. There's clawhammer banjo parts that I've transcribed and put mostly on the piano. And then other music started to come out of this. So there's about half of it is original, that has a bit of an American flavor to it, but it's a bit pointier, I guess. So the music kind of morphed into this. It's a 7-movement, 17-minute work. And there's in the middle of it, there's a big stomping fiddle tune called Brushy Fork, which is a Civil War era murder ballad. And that is played almost verbatim by the ensemble with some subtle arrangement stuff.
Mm-hmm. Would you say, question to both of you, if you like, would you say that music expresses something other than itself? I mean, is there a message of some sort in music?
In instrumental music, there is no message. Music is music. That's the beauty of it, I think.
You agree, Bryce?
I mean, I like, the piece for Lunapark tonight, "Oh Shut Your Eyes," is based on a poem, and in this case, the poem inspired the music, and so the music is its own. Its own. What I like about the poem is it has an open form. It's a poet named Larry Eigner who, and it's a really beautiful, simple poem. But essentially, he was experimenting with form at a time when that was, in the kind of 40s, when it was still a new thing to write poems that had an open-ended form. So this is something that I wanted, the music to take off from, but then the music becomes hopefully its own. I mean,
someone who does not know the poem
yeah.
is not in trouble at all.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
No,
not at all.
yeah.
So it has become a thing on its own, which doesn't need the poem anymore.
Right, that's true.
I mean, it would be. Of course, it adds something if you know the poem and but it doesn't need it.
It's a good title. That was the main thing I took from the poem.
It's a
Yeah, it's a good title. Yeah.
Thank you both very, very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.